Andrew, Claudio, do you know what today is?
I think I do. I think I know where you're going with this. What is today, John?
Well, today's July 8th, 2021, which means, and I am 38 years old. So that means when I was a 27-year-old on this very date, it is the anniversary of the drunkest that I have ever been in my life. And I've told this story before, so I won't tell it again. But the night,
for someone who wasn't there for the last time you told it, you can. It's okay.
Well, it's the night of the decision.
Yes.
I was bartending that night, and I had talked myself into the fact that LeBron was coming, because of course he was going to come, because how in God's name could he go anywhere else? Couldn't go to Miami and join up with two other guys. That wasn't done. That's not a thing that happened. And so when it didn't happen, there was some consumption of things that were behind the bar.
Were you bartending at the time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So were you working and this happened?
Here's the thing. Oh God, how much should I peel back the curtain? I got involved in a small group of bars while I was in college through a family member. Got me a job as a barback, as a way to kind of be like, I'll give you a test run. And I did that for 6 months, and then I was a DJ and then bartender and a manager and the whole thing. So I had worked my way up in this company for several years. So I had slightly more privileges than your average run of the mill bartender. So, which is to say that if I got sloshed one night behind the bar and completely lost control of my faculties, I was not going to get, fired. I probably got a stern talking to from someone or another the next morning, but yeah.
I have to look up the YouTube rules, but I think as a way to commemorate this night, maybe in the future, we'll just, do a drinking game on the air for one of the post-game pods. And YouTube started to add more and more content restrictions and things you have to submit, whether this is approved for a rating. So I don't know if getting completely wasted online is approved anymore. But
I've never been wasted live on Knicks Film School YouTube.
On YouTube? No, I know, because I've watched every single one of them. It would be interesting if that actually happened.
No, I don't think I would.
I will say this, the decision. Well, so first of all, you say you were convinced, or you had convinced yourself he was coming.
Yeah.
Is that with a curve on it that, was there any doubt that night? Because I have a different experience with the decision.
You know what it was? Once they announced that they were doing the special, and the fact that it was taking so long, at that point, I was convinced that he was leaving. So then it was like, well, he's not going to go play for the Clippers because it's the Clippers. And the only other, the Bulls were in it. I'm like, he's not going to follow in the footsteps.
It was 6 teams, if I remember that night. And the biggest image I have in my brain about the actual program, the decision, was them putting him in every single jersey. And then when he got put in a Knicks jersey, being like, that's it. That was the moment, my last bit of hope. So it was 6 teams. It was the Knicks, the Nets, the Heat, the Clippers, the Bulls, and obviously the Cavs.
Yeah. Okay. That was my recollection. So I was like, I had ruled out the Clippers because of the Clippers. I had ruled out the Bulls because of Jordan. I had ruled out the Nets because, obviously the biggest free agent's not going to go to the Nets. That's never going to happen as long as I'm alive.
Reminded they were still New Jersey at the time. So it was
no, wait. They went
to Jersey in 2012. They were announcing that they were eventually going to head, but it was still 3 seasons away before they were going to be in Brooklyn.
So whatever, you're right. They were still in Jersey. They were still in the swamp. And again, I told you I had ruled out the Cavs, and I had ruled out the Heat because, again, and this is, I think, where a lot of player movement has been the number one discussion that came out of that night over the last decade and change. But I also think in the immediate years that followed, there was a lot of back and forth about super teams and this LeBron made that a new concept, and then people pushing back and being like, well, wait a minute, Magic Johnson played with James Worthy and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Larry Bird played with his 2 Hall of Famers, and Kevin Garnett they just had, those 3 in Boston. And like, this had been happening ever since the days of like West and Wilt and Elgin. So it wasn't new, but at that time it felt like cheating, and I didn't think LeBron would cheat.
It had never been like, you could say Magic and played with Kareem, and like super teams probably had existed,
but they didn't do it in this way.
It had never been put together in one free agency. You had seen them organically build out to that. Like even the Bulls super team of the 90s was built out to that. And then Dennis Rodman, as a suppressed asset, went to Chicago and created that. Even the Boston one, neither of those guys went there in free agency. That the Celtics tanked
by a trade.
And the night of the draft, they traded for Ray Allen. And then it was a 7-for-1 deal with Paul Pierce that Kevin McHale did his buddy Danny Ainge a favor. So it had never been done in free agency, like you said.
And if you want to even go a step further, you could say that this wasn't full bore yet because Wade was already there. And even though, yes, Wade made the proactive decision to come back, he was still there. Really, it was KD and Kyrie. That was the full,
The question I guess I have for you is it fair to say, in your brain at least, that
I have left, yes.
Right. That the night of the decision, because I think every Knicks fan has had this, which is why, to relate it to today, it's been interesting to see we're finally not just pipe dreaming for an off season. Like, let's keep building this way. Is it fair to say that night was your come to Jesus of like, no one's ever coming here? No one's ever, like, going forward, I will believe it when I see it.
No, it was not.
What was it then? Or has it even happened yet?
I don't yet. I think we've turned. I don't think it ever. The closest that it came for me to happening was KD and Kyrie going to Brooklyn that night. So here's the other thing. The Knicks at that point, it was 2010, right? Mm-hmm. More than roughly half of my Knicks fan watching life was the Knicks were the center of the universe, of the NBA universe. Maybe not the center, but they were a little bit off center. Yeah. And they were one of the most respected organizations. That was up until 2001 ish. And then it started to go down, and then they made the playoffs again, 2004. People like to forget about that. And then it went really downhill with Isaiah. So my mindset leading up to 2010 was that the glory never left. It was just Isaiah got here and he made it such that free agents were incapable of signing here because there was no cap space. Mm-hmm. So when the LeBron thing happened, it wasn't no one's ever going to pick us. It was, oh my God, someone had the chance to pick us and said no. There was a long way to go before that was a full decade later.
That's a good distinction. And that's where, for me, like, I'm a little younger than you, so maybe a third of my Knicks fan life was when the Knicks were the center of the universe. But like, the Knicks had not had cap space or really anything significant since 99, 2000. And then for me, it was more like for 2 years, which is why when people say like, I want to build like the Melo trade shouldn't have happened. And like, the plan still from Donnie Walsh's brain was, we're going star hunting in the summer of 2010, and he struck out. So then the next stars that were available, they were going to go get. You can argue about whether or not, you should have made a trade like that, where the Knicks gave up too much like that. You can argue it if you want to. I still, like, with the lockout looming, I understand if, like, get a guy here while you can, so you have no idea what the next CBA is going to look like. Yeah. Having said that, for me, the night of the decision is similar to how you experienced it, in that someone had the chance to come here and didn't, but has also shaped, like, when Durant was a free agent in 2016, when the KD and Kyrie offseason. And it's why, like, look, the night of the decision, I was already convinced he was going to Miami, because when enough people tell you the same thing, because like leading up to it, and this is where when when he comes on here in the future, if you want to, I mean, you'll be quarterbacking the conversation. So maybe I won't tell him this, but I think when Evan Roberts comes here next, I have to blame him for why any thought the Knicks were coming here. Because for 4 days leading up to the decision, he was saying like he's coming to the Knicks. Maverick Carter was in New York. He's not just gonna have this big special and say that he's leaving.
It was in
to say that he's
Connecticut,
staying. It was in Connecticut. Allen Houston's nearby. Like how close is Westchester to where this thing is being done? And here what eventually happened that night was like he tweeted out, "I was wrong." Like Evan Roberts being like, "What? Now you were wrong? You were telling me for 4 days it was going to happen."
If I recall correctly, some reporter, I think, reported something to the effect of that he was leaning Knicks or it was going to be Knicks. I forget who it was.
You know who the reporter was? It was Alan Hahn.
Was it Alan?
So the two big reports from that night. This is pre-Woj and Shams.
Yeah.
Alan Hahn said, hearing that he's like the Knicks are the favorite. Then the big one was Greg Cody of the Miami Herald, who's now a big personality of the Le Batard show, tweeted out that night, so the night before the decision, I should say, that they're getting all three. And then the next day, the news cycle was that, oh my God, they're actually going to do this. All three of them are going, because then Bosh announced he was going, Wade announced he was going back, and then that night, LeBron made the decision.
I did not have Twitter. I wouldn't have Twitter for 6 years until after that.
I'll be honest. That was the first summer I had Twitter. That's the other part. God, a lot of people went on Twitter that summer.
6 years before I did. My God.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? But like, so I don't think I had heard anything until I got to the bar, and like, I think I kept refreshing. Oh my God, what was the website I used to go to all the time for this?
Was it True Hoop?
No, it's not True Hoop.
Okay.
Not Real. Was it Real GM? No.
It might have the Real GM. That was the one that it was. Real GM was the one I used to go to before Twitter.com decided to exist.
Well, Real GM is how I found out about Amari, because I just kept refreshing, and then that was that.
Yeah.
That was a happy moment. I was so happy when Amari came here.
It was the first time I thought that LeBron might actually come here because stars are coming back to New York. So
yeah, but such is life.
Happy anniversary, though, John.
Yeah. It's impossible to answer this question, honestly. It is not possible to answer this question, honestly, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
Do you wish he came?
Yes, of course I do. What's different if he doesn't? Like, what's the alternative to him not coming?
The alternative to him not coming is what has happened the last 11 years.
Right. So like, if you're saying like the domino effect of like, we don't end up with RJ, we don't end up with Worldwide West.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about like, so he would have come. They either don't win a championship.
So I see what you're saying. Cause I equated that question to if he comes, like, Wade's coming, Bosh is coming. Like, the success the Miami Heat had happened in New York. If you're saying he chose to play with Amari so here's my answer to that. Yes, because I think with the assets they used to trade for Carmelo, they then use those assets to trade for Chris Paul, and there's your big three.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'll say this. And this is why I prefaced it by saying it's impossible to answer, honestly, and then we'll move on to today's interview. Sitting here today, 2021, I am happy to be a Knicks fan that has never had a LeBron came to New York and won the Knicks a championship. Like, I'm happy I don't have that.
Because nobody that's rented the Knicks for a couple of years.
Yeah. I'm going to, and it's like, that would be, I think, unique to the Knicks because the Lakers had so many stars over the years. It's like, what's another star to come and put like, the Laker jersey on and like win a championship there. So I don't think it necessarily cheapened the Laker championship because, again, that's always been the Lakers' MO. And it certainly didn't cheapen anything for the Cavs because, they came back from 3-1 down. They hadn't won anything in 60 years or whatever it was. But not that it would have cheapened the championship, but like I don't know. It just when it happens, and it'll happen, I think it'll be that much sweeter. That's all.
I wonder. So this is a whole different conversation for maybe a different platform, by the way. Maybe just a different way
That's
that we would.
That's what they call a tease.
That is a tease. Stay tuned for a pretty big announcement coming soon from Knicks Film School. Anyway, it would be like it's impossible to actually, like you said, honestly answer this. But will it be sweet if it's like they go star hunting next offseason and the version of the team that exists, but it has Julius on it. And he's like the one guy that's been here, become a Knick, like quickly takes a leap. Whoever they draft takes a leap, and they're able to get like Lillard without trading RJ, you know?
I think
like that's the thing that I've been trying to personally
I hear you.
digest, and what I want in the Knicks to do in the future is, does it matter who's here when they're making their run? Does it matter that the guys are being rented, that they're just like living in New York, they're not actually Knicks? And yes, I'm like referring to what's going on in Brooklyn right now. Like you got to watch what they built, and now you have guys that don't like identify as Nets, whereas New York, we hear, became a rallying cry. Do I prefer that being successful and going for it to what seems to win right now in the NBA?
I mean, by that logic, the only, like in the last 10 years since the Mavs championship, right, in 2011, the only quote unquote, like legit is not the right word, but like you get like fully
non-super teams
or non someone came here and brought us over the top. The only ones of that nature were 2014 San Antonio, 2015 Golden State, and then this year. Well,
whoever
actually, no, because if Phoenix wins.
So while I'll give Phoenix a pass, though, is because like they didn't have to gut their roster. Like they didn't have to do an Anthony Davis trade. They didn't have to do a Kawhi, Paul George trade.
And those guys, there's gradients of this. Like the 10 out of 10 is if the Nets won this year. The 1 out of 10 is actually, I would actually maybe argue the Golden State in 2015, because that was truly homegrown. Like they just grew all those guys. They just happen to be fucking really good. I would like it to not be the 10 out of 10. I'd like it to be somewhere in the middle. But in terms of like if Dame's on the team and they win the championship, am I gonna like? No, I mean that would still be fucking awesome. I hope RJ's here too.
Yes, me too. I think the better question to your, and we can wrap up with this. The better question is like, had LeBron had the success he had in Miami, and you were now emotionally attached, like LeBron gave you 2 championships, the only 2 you've seen in your lifetime. Yeah. Would you be able to have a GOAT conversation?
A GOAT conversation?
Yeah, because now you're emotionally attached to it. Like LeBron's our guy. I would ride for him. Like, yes, LeBron's the GOAT. Go away, Michael Jordan.
I think
now you're different because you're very analytical and you look at the numbers. So you'd be able to be like, yeah, he's Michael Jordan. I love LeBron, but Michael Jordan.
I mean, Michael Jordan's my favorite athlete ever. After the Warriors champion or the Cavs championship in 2016, I came to understand and accept what LeBron had done in 2010. It took me 6 years, but that night something clicked for me, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. I will never like him, and I will never respect a lot of what he does. I respect what he does off the court a lot for charity and kids, and like being a good. I think for the most part he's a good role model in the whole thing. But I will never like him. But I still think at this point it's too close. Jordan's always gonna be my number one, but it's too close. I can't sit here and be like, oh, I'm right.
You answered my question by saying how much you don't like LeBron, and he's your number 2 all time, right? In my mind, I could go back to like 1980 because I just that's why guys you didn't see. It's hard to
like. I don't even know how to have a conversation about Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, frankly. Or it's a lot of third hand stuff. Reading what other people, mostly white, wrote about
Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain and Oscar Robertson and
just like, how do you wrap your mind around a league? I mean, we're really going off the rails here. How do you wrap your mind around a league that had 8 teams?
Yeah.
Or whatever, 12 teams, whatever the fuck it was. Like,
it's why the Willis, the Jokic being the second ever second round pick to win MVP
after Willis Reed, yeah,
who was the 8th pick in the draft.
Same pick as Obi Toppin. How about that?
There you go.